Dear Chosen One, have you ever felt an unspoken tension between you and certain people? Have you ever noticed how some pretend to be indifferent, only for their true emotions to explode later? It's strange, isn't it? How some people go to great lengths to convince themselves and everyone around them that you don't matter, yet their actions tell an entirely different story. They say one thing, but their energy, their reactions, their very existence around you betrays them. So, what happens when the truth they've been suppressing finally becomes too heavy to hold? It erupts. And when it does, it's not just a personal conflict, it's a revelation. The masks slip, the real emotions come out, and suddenly everyone can see what was always there. In today's message, we're going to uncover why these intense confrontations happen around you, why people fight, argue, and unravel in your presence, even when you've done nothing but exist, why your energy alone exposes everything they tried to bury. But before we dive in, I want to take a moment to say thank you to everyone who has supported this channel, to those who have sent love, and to those who have contributed through super thanks. I see you, I appreciate you, and I am deeply grateful for you. Whether you donate or not, your presence here means everything. You are part of this journey, and your energy is felt in this space. Now, let's start this conversation. If you feel connected to this message, drop the number 999 in the comments. 999 is a divine number of completion, transformation, and stepping into your highest self. By commenting 999, you are aligning yourself with clarity, truth, and the removal of everything that no longer serves you. Let's amplify this energy together. Now, let's get into it. God's chosen ones, an explosive fight broke out because they lied about how they feel about you. Chosen One, the streetlights flickered erratically, as if the universe itself was issuing a warning. Two figures stood tense, their bodies wound tight with an anger too raw to suppress. But this was no ordinary conflict. This was an eruption of years of suppressed emotions, ignited by your very existence. You weren't just a bystander to this chaos, you were the catalyst. But ask yourself, why does your presence cause such an intense reaction? Why does the very mention of your name make tempers rise, voices break, and masks fall? Secrets long buried under layers of deception had finally clawed their way to the surface, demanding to be reckoned with. And the pavement beneath them, silent, cold, unyielding, was about to bear witness to the storm. Someone was about to pay the price for their lies, and the currency was brutal honesty, delivered through clenched fists and unchained truths. But why did it come to this? Why did your presence trigger such a violent eruption? Because, Chosen One, you represent something they feared, a reality they could no longer deny. You are living proof that the truth they tried to suppress cannot be buried forever. Your name hung between them like an electrified current, pulsating with years of unspoken tension. One misplaced word, one last deceptive excuse, and boom, the storm would break. This wasn't just a brawl, this was Judgment Day, and you were the undeniable force pushing truth into the open. For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. Luke 8:17. The weight of concealed truths had grown too heavy to bear. The moment of reckoning had arrived, shattering illusions like glass under pressure. Someone at last had the courage to pull back the veil, exposing the deception for what it truly was. But truth, when it emerges, is never gentle. It is a blade that cuts through the carefully woven fabric of lies, leaving nothing but raw, unfiltered reality in its wake. And so, when words failed, fists took their place. But don't be mistaken, this was never just about you. This was about what you represent. Think about Joseph, sold into slavery by his own brothers. Their betrayal wasn't simply about him. It was about their own insecurities, their fear of what he was destined to become. They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him." Genesis 37:18-20. They resented him not just for who he was, but for what his existence revealed about them, their jealousy, their inadequacies, their inability to stop the will of God. And now, centuries later, the same battle plays out once more. But let's take this beyond the Bible. Look at Oprah Winfrey, one of the most influential figures in modern history. As a child, she was abused, ridiculed, and cast aside by people who could not see her worth. They tried to convince her that she was nothing, that her dreams were impossible, that she would never amount to anything. But now, she became one of the most powerful voices in media, an icon of perseverance and success. Her very existence is proof that their lies could not rewrite her destiny. And the same is true for you. The breaking point had arrived, like a relentless storm crashing against an unsteady wall. The false security they had built for themselves was crumbling, their illusions unable to withstand the power of the truth. This was never about a simple argument. This was a war between illusion and reality, between the comfortable lie and the disruptive revelation. And you are the revelation. They knew it before you did. They recognized your light long before you even understood your own significance. That's why they fought so hard to diminish it. That's why they twisted their own emotions, deceived themselves, and convinced each other that you were nothing. But pretending does not rewrite destiny. Suppression does not extinguish divine purpose. Jesus himself said, "If the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you." John 15:18. Their battle against you was never just about dislike or resentment. It was about denial. Denial of the fact that you, chosen one, were sent for a greater purpose. They told themselves they could control the narrative, that they could keep you boxed into the version of yourself they were comfortable with. But the truth has a way of bleeding through even the thickest walls of deception. And now there is no going back. Somewhere in the depths of their own minds, they are drowning in the weight of what they've done. The regret suffocates them, each breath heavier than the last, their hearts bound by the chains they themselves forged. Every lie they spoke, every moment they denied what they knew deep down, it all returns like a relentless tide swallowing them whole. They thought they could contain the truth. They thought they could ignore your significance. But truth is like fire. It cannot be buried without eventually consuming everything around it. At first, they convinced themselves you were nothing. They laughed, dismissed, ignored, and pushed you aside. But denial is a slow poison, and now it has seeped too deep. The illusion is shattering, the weight of their own deception closing in. And now they stand at the edge of their own destruction. But you were never meant to fall with them. You were meant to rise. There is no escaping the truth anymore. Chosen one, they tried to suppress it, to convince themselves that your existence, your presence, was nothing more than a passing shadow, insignificant and easily forgotten. But the mind is never truly silent, is it? What is ignored does not vanish. It festers, it decays, it becomes an infection that consumes from within. And now their own thoughts have turned against them, a relentless war waged in the quiet spaces of their own mind. At first it was simple: denial, dismissal, pretending you were just another face in the crowd, someone they could overlook, someone who didn't matter. But denial is a weak dam against the flood of truth. Frustration turns to suffering. Shame turns to self-destruction. The weight of their own deception has caged them in, and the cruelest irony, they forged the bars of their own prison. And now, they have no idea how to escape. But why? Why does the truth haunt them so mercilessly? Because truth is not a passive force. It does not whisper gently. It demands to be seen. And when it is buried, it does not stay buried. It grows roots, pushing through every crack, breaking apart every false foundation. The deeper they tried to conceal it, the more violently it surged back to the surface. And now the very lies they told themselves have become chains around their own soul. They have sown the wind, and they shall reap the whirlwind. Hosea 8:7. Look at history. Look at Napoleon Bonaparte, a man who rose to unimaginable power, convincing himself that he could control destiny itself. He ignored the warnings, believed he was untouchable. But in the end, his own ambition, his own refusal to face reality, led to his downfall. Exiled, stripped of everything he had built, left alone to face the weight of his own choices. Just like them, every decision they made, every deception, every attempt to suppress what was real has led them here. And now the darkness is no longer just around them, but inside them. This isn't just regret. It isn't just sadness. This is spiritual unrest. This is a sickness of the soul. Can you imagine what it feels like? To spend years running, only to realize that what you're running from has always been inside you. To silence the truth, only to find it screaming louder in the moments when no one else is around. They feel it now, the creeping weight in their chest, the whisper that won't let them rest, the mirror reflecting back more than just a face. It shows them everything they tried to avoid. This is their torment, their curse, their reckoning. And the most haunting part of it all, you never had to do anything. You never sought revenge. You never lifted a finger. You never had to expose them or force them to see the truth, because truth was always going to do this to them. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. They thought they could contain it. They thought if they ignored you long enough, you would fade away. But darkness can never outrun the light. And now the very truth they rejected has turned against them, whispering in the silence, haunting their dreams, consuming their peace. Chosen one, this wasn't just a fight. This was a reckoning, a moment when pretense could no longer hold, when illusion gave way to reality, when the veil was torn apart, exposing everything for what it truly was. The tension had been building for far too long, and when fists flew, they weren't just striking flesh. They were tearing apart the carefully constructed facades that had shielded them from the truth. The false confidence shattered, the indifference gone, the denial crushed beneath the weight of something far more powerful than a physical confrontation. Because this was never just about anger, this was about truth. And truth is a force that cannot be contained. It is a wildfire that spreads, consuming every lie, every deception, every carefully orchestrated illusion. They spent years pretending, convincing themselves and everyone around them that things were different, that you didn't matter, that they had everything under control. But when the moment of reckoning came, reality could no longer be ignored. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. John 8:32. But freedom is terrifying to those who have built their lives upon lies. And so, when the truth erupted, it didn't just expose them, it changed everything. Look at Howard Hughes, one of the most brilliant yet deeply tormented minds in history. He was a visionary, a genius, a man who built empires, yet he spent his final years in self-imposed isolation, completely trapped by the very illusions he had created. He buried himself in paranoia, in fear, in denial of the reality closing in around him. And when the truth finally became undeniable, it shattered him. That is the nature of truth. It does not change one person, it changes everything. Do you feel it? The shift in the air, the breaking of something unseen but deeply felt. The moment when everything they built, everything they relied on, collapsed under the weight of what they always knew but refused to accept. There's no undoing it now, no way to go back to ignorance, to false security. They saw it, and once seen, truth cannot be unseen. The masks are gone, the pretense is over, and in the raw, undeniable light of reality, they are left with nothing but themselves. And you were never meant to be hidden, never meant to be ignored. You were meant to be seen, and now they see you. For so long they tried to suppress it, the admiration they refused to admit, the jealousy they couldn't control, the fear that crept into their hearts every time you entered the room. They convinced themselves that ignoring you would erase the problem, that downplaying you would somehow dim your light. But the thing about truth, it doesn't need validation, it doesn't need permission. It will rise, no matter how deeply it's buried. They spent years avoiding it, building their own reality where they believed they were safe from what they didn't want to face. But truth is relentless. It does not stay buried. It waits. And when the moment is right, it erupts. And then it happened. A moment where emotions surged beyond control. The energy in the air shifted, the atmosphere thick with something raw, something uncontainable. They couldn't hide anymore. The illusion they built so carefully crumbled, not just before you, but before everyone. For whatever is hidden is meant to be disclosed, and whatever is concealed is meant to be brought out into the open. Mark 4:22. And the most powerful part, you never even had to lift a finger. This collapse, the unraveling of every false narrative, every lie, every mask, was not your doing. It was theirs. They did this to themselves. Every excuse they made, every desperate attempt to rewrite reality, every effort to suppress what was undeniable, it all caught up to them. The weight of deception, of years spent pretending, finally became too heavy to carry. And when it fell, the truth stood in the open, undeniable, unshaken, unstoppable. Chosen one, escape was always the plan. They thought they could slip away unnoticed, rewrite the narrative, pretend none of it ever happened. But did they really think they could outrun the truth? Did they truly believe that if they ran far enough, denied long enough, and twisted the story cleverly enough, they could erase the past? Because truth is relentless. It does not lose its way. It does not grow tired. It does not stop hunting just because someone runs. But here's the question. What happens when someone builds their entire reality on a lie? Whether this was in a workplace, within a family, or in the aftermath of personal betrayal, the foundation they built was never stable. It was an illusion, a house of cards standing on the fragile ground of deception, waiting for the inevitable gust of wind to send it tumbling down. And now, under the weight of their own actions, it is collapsing. Did they really believe their choices would never catch up to them? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. Genesis 4:7. They thought they could outrun consequence. But no one outruns divine justice. What was done in the dark has been dragged into the light. There is nowhere left to turn. No more masks to wear. No more lies to tell. No more illusions to uphold. But here's the real issue. Can they even face themselves now? Do you see it now? The way truth operates. It does not negotiate. It does not wait for convenience. It does not soften itself for those who wish to remain in denial. It arrives exactly when it is meant to, whether they are ready for it or not. Think about Elizabeth Holmes, the founder of Theranos. She built an empire on deception, convincing the world that her illusion was reality. But when the collapse came, it was swift, undeniable, and absolute. The very narrative she had created became the force that dismantled her. Do you see the pattern? And now, they stand in the wreckage of their own making. But the real question is, where are you? You are exactly where you were meant to be. Unshaken, unbroken, untouched by their downfall. Because this was never just a personal conflict. This was an energetic clash between truth and illusion. And as it always does, truth won. Chosen one, deception had ruled for too long. They built their world upon illusions, stacking lie upon lie, convinced that as long as no one questioned it, the foundation would hold. They thrived in secrecy, manipulating narratives to protect the fragile reality they had created. But the moment truth stepped in, everything shifted. The balance they depended on was disrupted, and even before they could fully grasp it, they felt it, a force pressing against their carefully constructed world, shaking it at its very core. Did you notice it? The way the energy in the room changed, the sudden tension in their body language, the forced smiles, the nervous glances. They knew something was coming, even if they couldn't explain it. That unsettling, growing discomfort was the presence of truth creeping in, making itself known, and the more they tried to ignore it, the stronger it became. You are a disruptor of deception. You walk into a space, and suddenly everything false begins to tremble. It's not something you do, it's something you are. And those who thrive in falsehood cannot stand in your presence without feeling exposed. They don't fear you as a person, they fear what you represent, the unshakable reality that everything they have built is a lie, and no matter how much they resist, truth will not bow to illusion. For the word of God is living and active, sharper than any double-edged sword, piercing to the division of soul and spirit, of joints and marrow, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart. Hebrews 4:12. Truth has that effect. It doesn't just disrupt, it cuts through. It exposes what lies beneath the surface, forcing those who have hidden behind deception to confront what they never wanted to face. And when truth stands in the open, illusions can no longer provide shelter. But why does your mere existence unsettle them so deeply? Why does it trigger such strong reactions, sometimes even before you speak? Because they were never fighting against you. This was never about words, actions, or past mistakes. They were fighting against truth itself. And truth, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of rising at the appointed time. They loved the darkness rather than the light, because their deeds are evil. John 3:19. They fought so hard, not to protect themselves, but to protect the comfort of their illusions. They told themselves that as long as they could silence the truth, as long as they could convince everyone, including themselves, that the lie was real, they would be safe. But the lie was never stable. It was a temporary shelter, a house of cards trembling in the wind. And when you entered the picture, the storm began. Have you ever wondered why certain people seem instantly uncomfortable around you? Why some become defensive before you've even said a word? It's because your presence forces them to see themselves clearly, stripped of excuses, stripped of masks, stripped of the carefully curated image they have spent years maintaining. And that is terrifying for someone who has spent their entire existence running from reality. This was not a random outburst. This wasn't just an emotional reaction or a moment of conflict. This was a divine test, meant to strip away illusions and drag hidden truths into the light. Think about it. Have you ever faced a situation that felt much bigger than what was happening on the surface? A moment that seemed almost orchestrated by something unseen? That's because it was. The physical fight, the hostility, the sudden eruption of emotions, those were just symptoms of a greater war. This was never just about what played out in front of you. The battle had already been set into motion in the unseen realms long before this moment arrived. This was a war between illusion and reality, between comfort and revelation, between deception and divine order. It was never about winning or losing in a worldly sense. It was about exposure. It was about forcing what had been hidden into the light where it could no longer be denied. Look at Martin Luther King Jr. He didn't wage war with weapons, but with truth. He disrupted a system built on deception, and because of that, he was feared, attacked, and resisted at every turn. His mere existence forced people to confront what they had chosen to ignore. And the more they fought against him, the more they revealed their own fear of the truth. Do you see the pattern? Truth does not need force. It does not need permission. It does not need approval. It wins simply by existing. They can deny it. They can resist it. They can fight it with everything they have. But in the end, they can never escape it. Chosen one, you were never meant to blend in with illusion. You were meant to shatter it. For too long, they thrived in deception, weaving a reality that suited their desires, convincing themselves that as long as they controlled the narrative, the truth would never rise. But truth is not something that can be silenced, and neither are you. You didn't have to say a word. You didn't have to fight back. Your existence alone was enough. They say the truth will set you free, but have you ever wondered why most people run from it? Because freedom requires responsibility. It demands honesty, and for those who have built their lives on illusion, honesty is terrifying. They would rather live in chains of deception than face the weight of truth. And you carried that truth effortlessly. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. But freedom for one person often feels like a threat to those still in bondage. Your presence exposed what they were trying to keep hidden. The chaos around you wasn't a coincidence. It was the natural consequence of deception being confronted by something it could not overpower. This fight was never a call for you to defend yourself. It was a revelation, a demonstration of what happens when truth collides with falsehood. The fight erupted because your existence made hiding impossible. Think about Nikola Tesla, a man who saw the world differently, who operated on a level most people couldn't comprehend. His ideas threatened the established order, and because of that, he was dismissed, undermined, and ultimately cast aside. The world wasn't ready for the kind of truth he carried, so they tried to bury it. But today, his name is synonymous with genius. His ideas live on, long after those who opposed him have faded. This is what truth does. It outlives deception. They wanted you to shrink, to blend in, to remain silent, because the alternative meant they would have to face themselves. But you refused. And so, the fight erupted, not because of anything you did, but because of what you refused to do. You refused to dim your light. You refused to pretend. You refused to be unseen. No one lights a lamp and hides it in a jar or puts it under a bed. Instead, they put it on a stand so that those who come in may see the light. Luke 8:16. Do you see now? This was never about you. They weren't just fighting each other. The real battle was within themselves. Every word spoken in anger, every desperate attempt to regain control, every ounce of resistance was not about defeating you. It was about fighting their own reflection. This is what happens when people are forced to see their own contradictions, when their carefully constructed illusions collapse, when the reality they worked so hard to suppress comes rushing to the surface. Look at Harriet Tubman. She didn't just escape slavery, she went back to free others. Her very existence was a direct challenge to the lie that some people were meant to be enslaved. And because of that, she became a target. Those in power fought desperately to keep the system intact, to protect the illusion that allowed them to rule. But she didn't shrink back. She didn't hesitate. She walked in truth, knowing that the battle was not against flesh and blood, but against something far deeper. And now you are walking that same path. You weren't meant to be hidden. You weren't meant to be silenced. You were meant to be seen. And whether they like it or not, they see you now. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. Chosen one, your energy didn't provoke them. It exposed them. It stripped away their excuses, forced them to see what they had buried, and made them confront the truth they had spent years trying to escape. They had crafted narratives to protect themselves, convincing everyone around them, and perhaps even themselves, that the illusion was real. They told themselves that if they ignored what was true for long enough, it would eventually fade. But truth does not fade. It does not weaken. It waits. And when the moment arrived, when they stood in the presence of something they could no longer deny, their carefully maintained deception began to unravel. Not because you attacked them, not because you sought to prove anything, simply because you existed. For some, that realization was unbearable. They resisted, clinging desperately to the comfort of their falsehoods. Others lashed out, hoping that by striking at you, they could silence the voice of truth screaming inside them. And some collapsed under the weight of their own lies, unable to bear the reality that they had spent so long running from. But none of them walked away unchanged. Have you ever wondered why people react so strongly to truth? Because deep down, they always knew. For the word of the Lord is right and true. He is faithful in all he does. Psalm 33:4. Truth is not an opinion. It does not bow to perception. It is not shaped by preference. It simply is. And in the presence of something so unmovable, those who have built their lives on deception have only two choices: face it or fight it. And most choose to fight. But you remained unbothered, because divine beings do not entertain chaos. They rise above it. You could have argued. You could have defended yourself. You could have fought back. But there was no need. Truth does not need to explain itself. It does not beg to be believed. It does not chase after those who deny it. It stands, firm and unshaken. And so did you. Where others react, you observe. Where others break, you remain steadfast. Where others seek to justify themselves, you simply embody truth. Because this was never your battle to fight. It was theirs. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. And yet, they fought against you as if you were the enemy. But was it really you they were fighting? Or was it the reflection of their own fears staring back at them? Have you ever noticed how people who are insecure in their own lies become defensive when confronted with truth? They accuse, they attack, they twist the narrative, not because they are right, but because they are afraid. Afraid that if they do not silence truth, it will strip them of the illusion they have hidden behind for so long. Think about Serena Williams, one of the greatest athletes in history, yet throughout her career she faced relentless scrutiny, not because she lacked talent, not because she wasn't the best, but because her presence alone disrupted the false narratives that others had built around her. They tried to provoke her, tried to break her, tried to make her feel like she had to defend herself at every turn, but she never played their game. She let her skill, her presence, and her truth speak for itself. And in the end, no attack could change the reality of who she was. You never needed to prove yourself. You never needed to explain yourself. And you certainly never needed to defend yourself. Because truth does not argue. It does not demand recognition. It does not shrink when ignored. It simply exists. That is why they cannot ignore you. That is why the conflict erupted. That is why, despite everything, you remain untouched. Look at Mahatma Gandhi. He didn't wage war with weapons. He didn't seek to destroy those who opposed him. He simply stood firm in what he knew to be true. And the world fought against him, not because he was wrong, but because his mere existence forced them to confront their own contradictions. They arrested him, tried to silence him, attempted to erase his influence. But in the end, he did not have to fight. Truth fought for him, and truth won. And now, you stand in that same position. Every conflict, every outburst, every betrayal has proven one thing: their battle was never with you. It was always with themselves. If God is for us, who can be against us? Romans 8:31. And because you walk in truth, you have already won. Chosen one, the universe had been speaking long before the fight erupted. The signs were all around you, woven into the fabric of your daily life, whispering in moments when others weren't paying attention. But you saw them. Nothing about this confrontation was random. Every event, every moment of synchronicity, every subtle nudge from your intuition had been preparing you for this exact reality. The unseen was always guiding you, sending messages in a language only those who are truly awake can understand. Did you notice them? The little confirmations, the repeated symbols, the strange sense of knowing before things even happened. Sunflowers appeared in your path, standing tall and unapologetic, just like you. To most, they were just flowers, but to those who can see, they were something much greater. Sunflowers are symbols of illumination, of turning toward the light no matter the circumstance. They do not shrink in darkness. They do not waver in storms. They seek the sun, always. And in the same way, this entire situation was turning toward clarity. For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. Luke 8:17. Shadows were being exposed. Lies were unraveling. Truth was making itself known, and your very presence ensured that no one could ignore it any longer. But sunflowers were not the only sign. Roses revealed themselves too. Beautiful, admired, timeless, but roses carry a double meaning. They are symbols of appreciation, of something that draws people in, but roses have thorns. Did you ever feel it? That tension beneath the surface. The way admiration never felt quite right, as if something was hiding just beneath it. People who claimed to respect you may have secretly envied you. People who appeared to support you may have been measuring themselves against you, resenting what they could not become. The tension was always there, buried beneath polite words, hidden behind forced smiles. The rose was the warning, the quiet signal that admiration and hostility often grow from the same root, because sometimes what people admire, they also wish to destroy. Look at Princess Diana, loved by millions, admired for her beauty, her grace, her kindness. But behind the admiration, there was resentment. The more she stood in her truth, the more threatening she became to those who wanted to control the narrative. The very world that once adored her became the world that sought to silence her. And yet, even in the midst of it, her light never dimmed. Even my close friend, someone I trusted, one who shared my bread, has turned against me. Psalm 41:9. How many times have you seen it? The moment someone refuses to shrink, refuses to be controlled, the moment they rise in their true power, suddenly admiration turns to resentment. It happened here. The thorns revealed themselves. The admiration you once felt from others became something else, something sharper, something meant to wound. But did it stop the rose from being beautiful? Did it stop the sunflower from turning toward the light? Number. Because truth does not fear exposure. It does not retreat when challenged. It does not crumble under pressure. Look at Malcolm X. He was once praised, lifted up, seen as a powerful voice. But the moment his truth no longer aligned with what others wanted to hear, the very people who once supported him turned against him. They saw his clarity as a threat, his presence as something that could no longer be controlled. And so they sought to remove him. And now, you have witnessed the same pattern unfold in front of you. You didn't need to say anything. You didn't need to call anyone out. The truth was already moving, already shifting the energy, already exposing what was hidden. Because when light steps into a space, the darkness has no choice but to be revealed. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. And just like the sunflower, just like the rose, you remained exactly as you were meant to be, unshaken, unchanged, and still standing in the light. Chosen one, Lizards crossed your path, a sign of transformation, of shedding old skins. Did you notice them? The way they appeared at just the right moments, almost as if they were trying to tell you something. This was not a random occurrence. This was a message, a signal that identities were shifting, that illusions were crumbling, that everything built on deception was beginning to peel away. Some people around you were desperately trying to hold on to the version of reality that benefited them. They clung to old identities, to old roles, to the comfort of the masks they had carefully crafted. But the universe does not allow stagnation. When transformation is meant to happen, it will happen, with or without their permission. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. Isaiah 43:19. They were being forced into transformation, whether they wanted it or not. Have you ever seen someone fight against their own growth? The fight wasn't just a reaction to you. It was a battle against the change that was inevitable. You didn't demand anything from them. You didn't ask them to shift. But the presence of truth forces everything to realign. And when truth enters a space, those who refuse to evolve have only one option: resist. And resist they did, until resistance turned into chaos. It was bound to happen. The tension had been there for too long, hidden beneath forced smiles, beneath unspoken words, beneath the weight of everything they were trying to suppress. But the pressure could only build for so long before it erupted. Do you see it now? Even the digital world played its role in this unfolding. Screenshots surfaced, conversations leaked, words spoken in secret found their way into the light. The very tools they once used to control the narrative became the instruments of their own exposure. The World Wide Web itself became a vessel for truth, ensuring that what was meant to be hidden could not stay that way. For whatever is hidden is meant to be disclosed, and whatever is concealed is meant to be brought into the open. Mark 4:22. Have you ever wondered why deception never lasts? Because the universe does not allow it to thrive indefinitely. When something is meant to be revealed, it will be, through any means necessary. It doesn't matter how carefully the lies were crafted, how many people were convinced, how tightly the truth was buried. Truth has a way of making itself known. Everything was leading up to this moment. There was never a version of reality where this confrontation wouldn't happen. The signs had always been there. The tension, the whispers, the gut feelings that told you something was coming. This was the breaking point. Think about Edward Snowden. He was once a part of the system, trusted, unseen. But the truth he carried was too heavy to remain hidden. And when the time came, everything he had witnessed was exposed, not because he sought destruction, but because truth demanded to be known. And once it was revealed, nothing was ever the same again. Nothing about this was coincidence. The patterns had always been there, the warnings always present. And when the moment arrived, were you really surprised? Because deep down you knew. The cycle is over. Look at J.K. Rowling. Before she was a household name, she faced rejection after rejection. Publishers telling her she wasn't good enough, that her words wouldn't matter. But she refused to accept their illusion. She knew what she had. And when the moment was right, everything shifted. The world that once ignored her was suddenly forced to see her. Do you feel that shift now? You knew the second it happened, that energy, that break, that moment when everything changed. There was no escaping this, no rewriting what had already been written. The truth has arrived, and it will not be ignored. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Matthew 24:35. Chosen one, they thought they could play both sides, manipulate the truth, twist reality to suit their needs, and walk away untouched. They were convinced they could deceive, betray, and cover their tracks without consequence. They whispered in secret, spun their narratives, and carefully crafted illusions to make themselves appear untouchable. But betraying divine energy comes at a cost. It doesn't matter how powerful they thought they were. It doesn't matter how many people believed their version of the story. The moment they moved against you, they moved against something far greater. They weren't just fighting you, they were fighting truth itself. And when someone wages war against truth, they always lose. They thought they could rewrite reality, that they could play their games and walk away unscathed. But what they failed to understand is that divine justice does not answer to illusion. Have you ever noticed how deception always seems powerful until it collapses under its own weight? At first they believed they were in control. They were confident, maybe even arrogant, convinced that they had everything handled. But now, people are seeing them differently. The trust they once had, gone. The influence they relied on, slipping through their fingers. The respect they thought was permanent, shattered. Whispers have turned into open conversations. What was once hidden in secret has now been dragged into the light. There is no wisdom, no insight, no plan that can succeed against the Lord. Proverbs 21:30. And they feel it, the shift, the weight of something they can't control anymore, the way the energy around them has changed, the way eyes linger longer than before, how conversations suddenly stop when they enter the room, the way even the people they once trusted now hesitate before aligning themselves too closely. They are beginning to understand this is not something they can escape. Their foundation, career, relationships, personal stability is cracking under the weight of karma. But this isn't punishment, it's the natural order. What happens when someone builds their life on deception? They thought they were untouchable, that they could manipulate people and never be exposed, that they could move through life without consequence. But you don't build on lies and expect to stand forever. They convinced themselves they could shape the truth to fit their desires, rewrite history, and force people to see only what they wanted them to see. But truth does not need permission to be known. It does not need approval to exist. And no matter how long someone suppresses it, truth always resurfaces. Look at Lance Armstrong. He was once celebrated as a legend, a hero, a symbol of perseverance and excellence. He built an empire on deception, on carefully constructed illusions that made him appear invincible, until the weight of the truth crushed him. When the truth surfaced, the world didn't just turn away, it unraveled everything he had built. His titles, stripped. His influence, destroyed. His legacy, forever changed. Because no matter how powerful deception appears, it always collapses beneath the weight of reality. And now, the same is happening here. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. Galatians 6:7. They thought they were in control. They believed they could shape the truth to fit their needs. They thought they could play both sides indefinitely, weaving in and out of lies, shifting their loyalty depending on what served them best. But divine justice does not answer to illusion. It answers only to truth. And now they feel it slipping away. The certainty they once had, the power they once wielded, the security they thought would last forever. It is all dissolving before their eyes. They grasp at what is slipping through their fingers, but they cannot hold on to something that was never truly theirs. And as they fall deeper into the consequences of their own actions, you remain exactly where you are, steady, untouched, above the wreckage. You didn't have to do anything. You never had to seek revenge. You never had to expose them yourself, because truth always takes care of itself. It does not need force. It does not need argument. It simply is, and those who resist it always crumble under its weight. Think about Marie Antoinette. She lived in luxury, convinced that her world would never change, that the illusion of power would last forever. She was told she was above consequence, but history had other plans. The people who once admired her turned against her. The wealth and influence she had taken for granted vanished overnight. And in the end, she learned too late that no illusion lasts forever. And now, they are learning that lesson too. The power they once had, it was never real. The trust they once held, it was never meant to last. The deception they relied on, it was always going to be revealed. You don't chase karma, you don't seek revenge, you move forward, because divine energy will always handle what is beneath you. The Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all who wait for him. Isaiah 30:18. And so you wait, you rise, and you watch as truth does what it was always meant to do. Chosen one, after the storm settles, the real power moves happen in silence. The chaos is over. The battle has ended. But if you think that was the final moment, you haven't been paying attention. The loudest part may be over, but the most important revelations happen now. In the stillness, in the aftermath. This is where the truth speaks. Not in rage, not in accusations, not in public displays of conflict. Truth is revealed in what happens after. Who suddenly kept their distance, who stayed close, who couldn't stop talking. Pay attention. The fight may have been loud, but the real answers are unfolding in the quiet. Some will pretend it never happened. They'll avoid eye contact, hoping you won't notice how quickly they disappeared when things got messy. They'll act as if nothing has changed, forcing smiles, pretending to be the same. But their energy, it will tell you everything you need to know. Others will now cling to you. They overlooked you before, but now they see who you truly are. They see the strength you carried, the truth you stood in, the way you didn't waver when everything else crumbled. And now they want to be near it. And then there are the ones who still whisper, still trying to control the narrative, still reshaping the truth into something more convenient, still spinning the story to protect themselves. They can't accept what's happened, so they do what people like them always do, rewrite history in their favor. But the thing about truth, it doesn't need their permission to exist. It stands. It does not chase, it does not argue, it does not demand belief. It simply is. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Matthew 7:16. People's true colors weren't revealed in the fight itself. They were revealed in what came next. Look closely. Who was there for you when the dust settled? Who proved their loyalty through actions, not just words? Who exposed themselves through hesitation, avoidance, or desperate deflection? Because make no mistake, no one can fake their position anymore. The masks have been stripped away. There is nothing left to hide behind. And the truth? It is standing there, in plain sight, for all to see. You don't need to call it out. You don't need to chase explanations. You don't need to demand accountability. Just watch. The answers are right in front of you. Think about Steve Jobs. When he was removed from Apple, people vanished. The same people who once praised him, who stood by him in his success, suddenly disappeared when he was no longer in power. But when he returned, when he rebuilt, they came back, hoping he wouldn't remember how quickly they abandoned him, hoping he wouldn't notice how fast they distanced themselves when things got difficult. That is the nature of people. They reveal themselves not in how they show up during your victories, but in how they behave when everything falls apart. The fight is over, but the aftermath is just beginning. The dust has settled, the illusions have crumbled, and now all that remains is truth. You didn't have to fight for it. You didn't have to prove anything. You stood still, and yet everything was exposed. That was always the difference. While they scrambled to control the damage, you remained steady. While they panicked, you stayed untouched. While they obsessed over how to recover, you simply moved forward. Because power isn't in how loud you can be. It's in how unshaken you remain. Think about Maya Angelou. She once said, When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. She watched how people treated her, how they shifted based on circumstance. She never begged for loyalty. She never asked people to stay. She simply walked in her truth, and those who were meant to be with her remained. And now? They may never admit it, but they see it now. Your power, your presence, your influence, it lingers in their minds. It follows them into their conversations. It weighs on them, even in the silence. Have you ever noticed how people hesitate before speaking your name now? How their words carry a different tone. They feel it. They know now what they tried to deny. And that knowing, that's something they will carry forever. For we can do nothing against the truth, but only for the truth. 2 Corinthians 13:8. Chosen one, some will watch from a distance, still trying to understand what makes you different. They may never say it out loud, but deep inside, they feel it. They see it. They always have. Have you ever noticed the way their energy shifts when you walk into the room? How their conversations change? How their laughter seems a little more forced? How their words become careful and measured? They don't understand why you unsettle them. Why does your presence alone shake the foundation of their reality? Why do they feel the need to analyze you, to study you, to find an explanation for something they cannot define? The truth is, they already know. Others will take a different approach. They will try to mimic, to imitate, to steal the very essence of what makes you who you are. But if you take away their performance, their rehearsed words, their borrowed ideas, what is left? They will rewrite their own role in the story, pretending they were always on the right side. But deep down, they know you were never like them. No matter how much they try to walk in the light you stand in, they cannot replicate what was never given to them. And now, while they deal with the chaos of their own making, you keep moving. But have you noticed something? The way you don't need to react, the way you don't need to prove anything. You don't gloat. You don't look back. You don't lower yourself to their level. Why? Because this was never about them. It was always about you. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Romans 12:2. Now, everyone sees why you were never meant to be silenced. Why did they fight so hard to contain you? Why did they hope to diminish you, to pretend you were nothing, to make you feel small? Because they knew the moment you stood firm in your truth, everything that wasn't real would collapse. And the best part? This is only the beginning. Because beyond all the drama, the tension, the conflict, this was never really about the fight. It was a divine test, a moment designed to refine you, not break you. Have you ever thought about that? How every reaction, every revelation, every shift in energy was placed there for a reason. Nothing that happened was random. Every piece of it was orchestrated to show you exactly what needed to be revealed. This wasn't about loss. It wasn't about conflict. It was about clarity. Look at Nelson Mandela. He was imprisoned, betrayed, underestimated. Do you think he didn't see their true colors? The people who turned their backs, the ones who supported him in silence but spoke against him in public. The world watched as he was silenced, treated as if he was the enemy, but he never fought the battle they wanted him to fight. Why didn't he fight back? Because he knew time would reveal everything. And when the truth finally surfaced, who stood firm? Who crumbled? Who proved their loyalty? Who exposed themselves? That's what this was for you. An initiation, a breaking away, a divine confirmation of what you've always known. You are chosen, and chosen ones do not walk among deception. The moment you stepped into your power, everything false had to fall away. The tension, the betrayal, the confrontation, none of it was random. It was a spiritual elevation, a stripping away of illusions so that only truth remained. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. Have you noticed how much lighter you feel now? This was never about who won or lost. It was about who stood firm and who crumbled under the weight of their own deception. The path is clear now. No more distractions, no more confusion, no more lingering in places you've outgrown. The universe just removed what was never meant to continue with you. What's ahead is not just another chapter, it's your next level. Think about Oprah Winfrey, told she wasn't good enough, rejected, dismissed. How many people counted her out? How many people thought they had the power to decide her worth? But she didn't argue. She didn't fight for approval. Do you know what she did? She simply walked into the life that was meant for her. And now, the very people who once overlooked her watch from the sidelines, knowing they can never rewrite their role in her story. That's where you are now. The doors that were once hidden, they're wide open. But are you ready to walk through them? Because now there is no going back. You are walking forward, unshaken, unstoppable, fully aligned with what was always meant to be yours. And why do you think they fought over you? Because the truth could no longer be contained. The lies they told about their feelings, their intentions, their loyalty became too heavy to hold. They denied. They suppressed. They acted as if you didn't affect them. But energy doesn't lie. Their actions betrayed them. The tension had been there all along. Did you feel it? Simmering beneath fake smiles, hidden behind forced indifference, waiting for the moment it would all unravel. And when it did, hands were thrown, words were spilled, and the mask they had carefully crafted shattered in front of everyone. This wasn't about the surface-level conflict. This was about you, your presence, your power, your ability to make people confront what they would rather bury. Do you finally see why you were never meant to fit in? They weren't just fighting each other. They were fighting their own inability to control how they feel about you. And now, they see it, they feel it, and they will never be able to deny it again. The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Psalm 118, verse 22. So now, beloved chosen one, the truth is out. There is no undoing it, no reversing what has been exposed, no taking back the moments when deception crumbled under the weight of undeniable reality. They can't pretend anymore. The ones who acted like you didn't matter. They have proven otherwise. The ones who downplayed your presence, they have made it clear that they always felt it. The ones who claimed indifference, their actions told a different story. You never had to force the truth to come to light. You didn't have to chase them. You didn't have to demand acknowledgement. You didn't have to convince anyone of who you are, because your energy did the work for you. Everything you needed to know has been revealed. Everything false has fallen away. And now, you stand exactly where you were always meant to be, unshaken, unbothered, and untouched by the chaos that tried to consume you. Have you ever noticed this tension before? Have you experienced moments where people's true feelings toward you only became clear after everything unraveled? Maybe they kept their distance, maybe they suddenly clung to you, or maybe they worked tirelessly to twist the narrative in their favor. Drop your experiences in the comments below. Let's share, reflect, and uplift each other. If this message resonated with you, if you found value in this truth, I want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Thank you for standing strong in your truth, even when it wasn't easy. If you feel led to support this channel, you can do so through Super Thanks. Your generosity is deeply appreciated, but please know this: your presence alone means everything. Whether you donate or not, I am grateful for you. As you move forward from this moment, may your path be clear and filled with divine guidance. May you walk with confidence, knowing that you were never meant to be hidden. May every false connection be removed and every true one be strengthened. May your energy continue to speak for you, revealing truth and attracting only what aligns with your highest good. May you step into this next season fully aware of who you are, fully grounded in your purpose and fully protected by divine favor. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. You are seen, you are chosen, and your presence alone changes everything. May blessings, abundance, and peace follow you wherever you go. Until next time, keep walking in your truth.